So I would normally define intermediality as the combination and the transformation of different media types and different media products, modalities of media. I would consider it often a relatively descriptive approach to all communication, ranging from the arts, cinema, but also to popular science communication, to journalism, to literature. So I consider it to be a very, very broad phenomenon. But it has to do with either the mixing or the transformation of media.
Intermediality obviously is the art form of the 20th and 21st century. So it's all about the relations between the different media, coming from theater and from painting to film. The invention of film changed everything, as there was movement, or you could also say youth in us. It was the film gave us the possibility which only God had before, to change the time frame, to change the time error, to change everything. And then it moved on to television and to the other media, nowadays to the net, to the cloud.
The cinema is itself a very intermediate medium. If you think about how it mixes, in a sense, it's the art that mixes all the arts, isn't it? It's the art where all the arts come together, so that there is a kind of a strong element, if you want, of intermediality already embedded in the medium. And we identify it when one of those kind of embedded presences of other media becomes more recognizable, more tangible, and so that we kind of suddenly sense that the medium is speaking to us in more than one way, and kind of sort of alluding to more than one medium at the same time.
I'm definitely new to the intermediate studies, but I mean the first thing that comes to mind would be just interaction of media, and I think the world we live in, basically, because every medium is everywhere now, and no medium is pure and kind of affected by every other media. So to me, it's just this complexity of interactions between them, between means of communication.
I think it's really hard to pull intermediality out of any other conversation that we might have about arts and humanities. My own background is in literature. I studied French and philosophy. Then I moved into a film studies department. Now I do a lot of work with history and geographical border crossings. And so in all of those subjects, one art form bleeds into another art form and they become intermeshed. And so I think intermediality is absolutely fundamental to what we do in the arts and humanities, no matter what your discipline is. And in a way, it's conferences like this that make explicit something that's always implicit in our work.
Affects are a difficult thing, and the avant-garde artists tried to analyze the affects as they are such a difficult thing. They don't go away, they are there, and the avant-garde elaborated three aesthetic procedures to handle the affects. First, they emphasized the materiality of the affects. The second procedure was and still is the playful staging of the media itself. And the third would be to change, as Walter Benjamin put it, to translate the methods of montage which are the central methods of cinema and radio, from, as he called it, from a technological process into a human one, to retranslate montage on the human scale. And that clearly points out to theatre, to the theatre of Brecht, of course, in Benjamin's times, but to the live performance.
So one thing about your question is that it depends on, of course, how you define affect and affective in the first place, affectivity. So some, I would guess, in the conference here, also what I've already heard, would have to do with representing different emotions and feelings and effects on cinema. That is a kind of relatively straightforward, you could say, that it produces, represents some emotions, effects on screen, and then perhaps as receivers we can pick it up.
Particularly in terms of the filmic medium, there is an ability of the medium to sort of evoke other senses, the sort of tactility, for instance, of the image, but also the way in which sound, can sort of suddenly envelop you in a way that sort of triggers other senses, right? So that sort of affective element of the medium, the capacity of the medium to sort of elicit affect in that way, is sort of it creates, in terms of intermediality, creates almost a kind of a state of in-betweenness where the spectator feels almost in between, sort of with their senses enhanced by the way in which film can trigger those senses. You feel almost in between sort of two media.
Well, one of the philosophers that I work on, Stanley Cavell, talks about the experience of reading a book, and you might read it for the first time as a child, and then you come across it again as an adult, and there's something about that experience that takes you right back. It's very Proustian, and it's the same with film. And then, of course, as these different art forms intermesh and intermingle, then a still photograph that we might see in a moving image film spurs off a whole other set of associations and feelings. I think about a film that I saw recently, which was Annie Ernaux's film, The Super 8 Years. Ernaux is a writer, I know lots of her novels, I'm really familiar with the characters that she describes, and yet there was something about seeing them brought to life on film through these home video footages that created a different effect again. It's almost like the kind of meeting of these two art forms creates something new, and I think that's where the real effective power of intermediality lies.
But if we understand then affect not so much related to direct emotions, feelings, which is one tradition, and think more about affect in terms of relatedness, connectedness, then it's something else, I think. Then cinema and all other media forms, they are not so much about doing representations of emotions and feelings, but more about connecting different aspects of the world with the receiver.
I was in this panel where one of the presenters used AI in her short film, so I think this would be the easiest answer from my side. Or recently I was also in an exhibition of paintings which actually were generated by AI. So I think any visual kind of art form or visual medium will one way or another end up dealing with AI. I think that would be the future, at least in the near 10, 20 years.
You quite rightly you said the medium of the moving image, because in a sense it's even hard to call it cinema anymore. We experience it less and less in cinema theaters and more on other screens and other media. computers, mobile phones, and TV screens. And so what is its future? Its future is, I think, cinema in a sense has always been evolving from the very, very first day. It's never been the same. And it is what I find also fascinating about film is that, and the history of film, that it's also a history of technology in a sense, right? I mean, and the way in which the medium continuously evolves. Today, the image is almost detached, from the medium, and it exists in so many ways and forms. So its future is to continue to inhabit, this all these sort of media that have become so connected and so intermingled, through our screens, So I think, I'm not pessimistic about the cinema. I think it's going to continue to exist, and indeed it has detached itself, from what was the experience, the sort of predominant experience of film in the past century, let's say, the one of the century of cinema, which was, to be in a cinema theater, and it's now, detached from it, but it's so pervasive that I think it will continue to exist, in future embodiments.
So I'm not a film scholar, so I'm not the right person to ask. But isn't it I would guess that it has to do with a kind of the expanded field of cinema, right? Moving images being everywhere around us. When I walked here this morning, I saw a kind of a moving cinema on the road. This is something totally new to me. I've never seen it before. There was a truck with screens on it all around, with moving images on the truck moving. And that to me was very strange. And I've seen, moving images on buildings, of course, and in the cinema on my mobile screen, but I've never seen a kind of a truck doing cinema in the street. So I mean, that's probably the future of cinema, to be spreading in all areas of life, with all the riches and all the forms of cinema. That's my guess, a very poor guess.
Of course, the experience of going to the cinema and watching cinema, the pre-digital cinema, the real cinema, fades away. So cinema becomes, in a way, what also theater became, a kind of museum of human gestures, of human abilities. But of course, the moving image will go on and will find new media and new intermediality.